The stagecoach lurched to a stop, wheels shrieking against the grit. Dust curled in the air, hot and bitter, settling over the faces of those who'd gathered to watch. Red Creek had a way of gathering for any spectacle, and today it was the stranger stepping down from the coach. Clara Hastings set her boot on the ground, skirts heavy with road dust, bonnet tilted low to shield her eyes. The sun was merciless, pressing against her shoulders like a hand that meant to shove her into the earth. She carried no trunk, only a leather satchel clutched tight against her side and a folded letter gone soft with rereading. The driver flicked his reins, and the coach rattled away in a cloud of grit. Silence pressed in. From the boardwalk, men in sweat-dark hats leaned against the saloon post, watching with the narrowed eyes of men who measured everything. Stranger, cattle, storm. By weather it meant trouble. She waited. The man who was supposed to meet her did not appear. The street stretched empty beneath the blistered sky, broken only by the buzzing of flies and the slow sway of a sign above the mercantile. Her heart beat against her ribs, steady at first, then faster, as if the silence itself was an answer. From inside the saloon came laughter, sharp and mean, spilling through the swinging doors. A voice carried clear. "Reckon she don't know yet. Poor gal came for a wedding, but her groom's been in the ground near a month." More laughter followed, low and cruel. Clara's grip tightened on the letter. The paper trembled. She kept her head down, though her ears burned with every word. The wind stirred grit along the street, tugging at her skirts, whistling a lonely sound between the clapboard buildings. She stepped toward the saloon. The boards of the porch creaked under her weight. She stopped short of the doors, the shadows within broken by the shifting shapes of men and their whiskey glasses. Another voice, slower, older, carried from inside. "Should have told her not to come. Ain't right. Leaving a woman hangin' on hope." A glass clinked hard against the counter. "Ain't our burden. World don't owe her nothing." The words hit harder than the sun. Clara turned away, back to the open street. Behind her, the laughter started again, chasing her steps like spurs dragging across stone. She lowered herself onto the bench outside, wood splintered and worn smooth by years of waiting men. She folded her hands over the satchel, over the letter, and looked down the street one more time. Empty. Not even a dog stirred in the heat. The dust seemed to thicken, shimmering gold and red, until it swallowed the horizon. Her throat ached. She blinked hard and let her eyes fall to the boards beneath her boots, as if the ground might steady her against the weight pressing from every side. That was when she felt the tug, soft, hesitant at the edge of her sleeve. She looked down and saw her. A little girl, no more than 6, stood barefoot in the dirt, dress torn and stained with old dust. Her hair fell in tangled ropes, her cheeks smudged. Eyes too large for her thin face looked up at Clara, eyes that carried something older than a child should carry, something heavy with knowing. The girl's lips parted, but her voice came only as a whisper, so small it seemed it might break apart in the hot wind. "Can you be my mommy?" The word struck like a shot, cutting through the noise of the saloon, the whisper of dust, the weight of the sun. Clara froze, staring down into that face. The child clutched at her sleeve again, desperate, as though afraid the question alone might drive the stranger away. From inside the saloon, the laughter still rolled. From across the street, a pair of women glanced, frowned, and turned quickly away. No one stepped forward. No one claimed the child. Only the silence stretched, waiting for an answer. Clara opened her mouth, closed it, then reached out and brushed the girl's hair back from her brow. The strands were brittle, rough from neglect. The girl leaned into the touch like it was the first she'd known in a long while. The letter slipped from Clara's lap, landing in the dust. Its words meant nothing now. The girl whispered again, softer still, as though afraid the desert itself might steal the words. "Please." And in that moment, with the heat pressing down and the town watching from the corners of their eyes, Clara Hastings drew in a breath that tasted of dust and sorrow, and knew she was no longer waiting. The child's hand was cold when Clara took it, small fingers gripping hers with a strength born of hunger and fear. Together they walked the narrow street, past shutters that rattled in the rising wind and windows where curtains twitched but no face lingered. The sun sagged toward the ridge, bleeding red light across the boards of Red Creek. Shadows stretched long, bending like silent sentinels. Behind Clara, the saloon doors swung, laughter spilling until it was swallowed again. She said nothing, and neither did the child. Only the sound of their boots, the heavy thud of a grown woman, the soft patter of bare feet, carried through the stillness. They reached the edge of town, where buildings thinned into dust-lot yards. The girl stopped before a shack with a door hanging loose on its hinges. She pointed, her chin lifted in quiet defiance though her lip trembled. Clara pushed the door open. The room inside smelled of mildew and long neglect. A broken chair slumped in the corner, and the remains of a pallet lay against the wall, its blanket gnawed by mice. A tin cup sat overturned on the floor. The girl stepped in, shoulders squared as though this wreck of boards and dirt was hers to defend. Clara followed, satchel pressed to her chest. She turned slowly, taking in the ruin. The girl's voice came small but steady. "Mama's gone." Clara's throat closed. She looked down, met those wide eyes that spoke of things no child should know. "Papa too," the girl added. Her gaze flicked toward the door, to the horizon beyond. "They shot him." Outside, coyotes yipped, their cries twisting with the wind. Clara knelt, skirts settling into the dust. "What's your name?" "Lily." The name trembled in the air, fragile as glass. Clara brushed her thumb across Lily's cheek, streaking away the dirt. "You hungry?" Lily nodded once. From the satchel, Clara drew out a heel of bread, saved from the journey. She broke it, pressed the larger piece into Lily's hands. The girl devoured it in silence, crumbs scattering over her dress. Clara watched, her chest tight. The wind rose outside, rattling the shack. Shutters clapped against broken frames. Somewhere farther off, hooves echoed faint against the ground, fading into night. Clara's fingers hovered at her satchel again. Beneath the folded linen, beneath the letter no longer worth reading, lay the cold weight of a Colt revolver. She felt it there, silent, patient. She shut the bag before her hand could linger. The girl curled against her when the last bite was gone. The weight of her head on Clara's lap was startling, a trust given without question. Clara smoothed her hair, slow strokes that tamed nothing but soothed everything. From the street, voices passed. Two men, low and sharp. "Sheriff says let the girl fend for herself. Can't keep feet in what ain't ours. Should have run her out after her pa got killed. Folks don't forget bloodlines." Their boots scuffed away. Silence followed, heavier than before. Clara's jaw set. She kept her hand moving through Lily's hair until the child's breath slowed into sleep. The night deepened. A lantern flickered in the saloon, casting long shadows across the street. Coyotes wailed again, closer this time. The wind carried with it the faint jingle of spurs, far off, then gone. Clara lifted Lily into her arms, thin body light as feathers. She laid her on the pallet, spreading her shawl across her. The girl stirred, whispered in her sleep, "Don't leave." Clara sank against the wall, eyes heavy, but her hand never strayed far from the satchel. The desert sang its night song, wind through cracks, coyotes crying, the scrape of branches against tin. Shadows stretched across the walls, reaching like fingers. The first barn went up before dawn, flames clawing at the sky like a second sunrise. Clara stood in the doorway of the shack, Lily clutching at her skirts, while smoke rolled black across the town. Hooves thundered past, riders bent low, faces shadowed by wide brims. Gunfire cracked, echoing off the canyon walls, sharp as a whip. Dogs barked and fell silent. Red Creek woke to fire and fear. Clara stepped into the street, dust and smoke swirling together, stinging her eyes. Neighbors shouted, buckets passed hand to hand, water splashing uselessly against the inferno. The riders laughed as they wheeled their horses through the chaos, pistols flashing in the dark. One stopped close enough for Clara to see his grin, yellow teeth scar across his cheek. He spat at her feet and rode on, whooping as another shot rang out. Lily pressed her face against Clara's hip. Clara's hand dropped to the satchel, feeling the weight within, the familiar shape pressing back. She did not draw. Not yet. The fire spread until the barn collapsed in a roar. Sparks flew high, carried on the wind toward the fields. Men cursed. Women cried. The sheriff arrived late, pistol half raised, voice breaking as he shouted for order. The riders ignored him, circling once more before vanishing into the desert, leaving only smoke and ruin. Clara held Lily close, eyes fixed on the horizon where the dust of their passing still rose. By mid-morning, Red Creek gathered in the saloon. The air stank of sweat, whiskey, and fear. Clara sat in the back with Lily on her lap, listening as voices tangled into anger. They'll be back. They've claimed this town before, they'll claim it again. Sheriff won't stand. Man's too scared of his own shadow. The sheriff slammed his hand against the bar, but the sound was swallowed by laughter. He tried again, voice cracking. We can't fight him. Best we keep our heads down, give him what they want. The room seethed with mutters. Some nodded. Most turned away. Clara rose, the bench scraping against the floor. All eyes shifted to her, some curious, some mocking. Her voice was steady. You mean to hand them the town? A man with gray whiskers spat tobacco into a tin. What's it to you, widow bride? You got no stake here. Laughter rippled. Clara's jaw clenched, but she said nothing more. She took Lily's hand and left, the weight of the stairs burning against her back. That night, the riders returned, not with fire, but with laughter, riding slow through the streets, guns drawn loose at their sides. They tipped hats at the women, shoved men from the boardwalk, knocked over barrels just to hear them roll. Clara watched from the shack's doorway, Lily pressed tight against her. Shadows flickered across the girl's face, eyes wide but unblinking. One rider paused before them, boots hanging from his stirrups, pistol twirling lazy in his hand. He leaned low, eyes glinting beneath the brim. Best run, lady, he drawled. Storm's comin', and it don't spare widows nor brats. He wheeled his horse, galloped off with the others, leaving silence behind like a wound. Clara's hand slipped into the satchel that night, closing around the Colt. She drew it out, the lantern's light glinting off the steel. The grip still bore the initials, worn smooth by use. Her thumb brushed across them as if tracing an old scar. She stepped outside, lifted the revolver, and fired once into the night sky. The crack rolled across the desert like thunder, sending coyotes into howls. Smoke curled from the barrel, the smell sharp and bitter. Lily stood in the doorway, staring, not afraid. Clara lowered the gun, holstered it, and met the child's gaze. Neither spoke. Days passed. The riders came and went, their laughter like a plague on the wind. Fields lay trampled, fences torn down. The people of Red Creek bowed their heads lower with each raid, voices hushed, eyes hollow. But in the shadows of the shack, Clara practiced. She set bottles along the fence, shattered them one by one until her wrist no longer trembled. She drew and fired by lantern light, the Colt steady as her breath. She cleaned it slow, careful, as though tending to an old friend. Lily watched, silent, learning the rhythm of the shots, the way the woman's stance never wavered. At night, Clara taught her where to hide, which cracks in the wall led to tunnels of dust, where to crawl if danger came. Lily nodded, solemn, never questioning. The town whispered. Some said the widow bride was mad. Others said she carried a ghost inside her, the kind that didn't rest easy. And still the riders promised to return, louder each time, their voices ringing down the canyon. When the moon's full, Red Creek will be ours. The people trembled. The sheriff drank. Clara listened, and in her silence, the desert remembered her name. The clock struck noon, each clang echoing down the empty street. Heat shimmered off the dirt road, blurring the line between earth and sky. Red Creek stood still, shutters barred, doors bolted, faces peering through cracks too narrow for courage. Hooves broke the silence. The riders came in a cloud of dust, 6 wide-brimmed shadows against the burning light. Spurs jingled, saddles creaked, pistols glinted like teeth. They spread across the street, horses stamping, breath steaming in the heat. Clara stood alone at the center. Her bonnet was gone, hair loose in the dry wind. The Colt rested steady in her hand, sunlight flashing off the barrel. Behind her, hidden in the doorway of the shack, Lily watched, small fingers curled white around the wood. The leader of the riders dismounted, boots sinking deep in the dust. His coat swung heavy at his sides, pistol low on his hip. He grinned, the scar on his cheek pulling taut. "Ain't no law here, widow bride. Step aside, and we'll let you keep breath in your lungs." Clara said nothing. Her eyes, steady as iron, fixed on him. The silence stretched. Dust swirled. The desert held its breath. A rider laughed, sharp and cruel. "She's one woman standing against 6 guns. Another spat. Won't even be worth a bullet." The leader's grin widened. His hand hovered near his pistol. Last chance. Clara's thumb eased back the hammer. The sound was a crack in the stillness. The first shot split the air. The leader's grin vanished as he staggered, dust kicking high where he fell. The street erupted in gunfire, horses rearing, men shouting. Clara moved like a storm unleashed. Her arms swung smooth, each shot true, each breath measured. A rider fell from his saddle. Another reeled backward, clutching his chest. The Colt bucked, smoke coiled, brass casings hissed in the dirt. The townsfolk gasped behind shuttered windows, eyes wide as they watched the bride no one wanted carved through the gang like judgment itself. One rider charged, pistol blazing. Bullets tore splinters from the boards, glass shattered. Clara pivoted, her skirt twisting in the dust, and fired once. He dropped, the echo rolling down the street like thunder. 2 remained. Fear broke through their bravado. One wheeled his horse, spurring it hard, dust rising in his retreat. The other stumbled backward, gun shaking in his grip. "Why you ain't no bride?" he stammered. Clara's eyes never wavered. Smoke curled from the Colt, steady in her hand. "No," she said, her voice carrying across the dead silent street. "I'm the Widow of Abilene." The name struck like a ghost called from the grave. The rider froze, eyes wide with recognition. Then he dropped his gun, turned, and ran into the desert, his shadow swallowed by the heat. Silence fell again, broken only by the settling creak of wood and the faint buzz of flies. Clara lowered the Colt, chest heaving, the weight of the gun heavy but certain in her hand. Dust drifted down, soft as ash. From the shack, Lily stepped out, small feet bare against the dirt. She ran across the street and threw her arms around Clara's waist. Her face pressed against the dust-stained fabric, her voice barely more than breath. "Can you be my mommy?" Clara's hand, still trembling from the fight, found the child's hair, smoothing it back gentle. She looked down, eyes burning not with fire but with something deeper. "I already am." The words carried quiet, but the town heard them. Doors creaked open, shutters lifted, faces emerged into the light. They looked upon her not as a bride left unwanted, nor as a widow of ghosted past, but as the woman who had stood when no one else would. The desert wind swept through, carrying smoke, carrying whispers. And long after, when the fires were rebuilt and Red Creek breathed again, the story was told. Told in saloons, told on porches, told by old voices to children gathered close. That it was not a sheriff, nor a gunslinger, nor any man at all who saved Red Creek from ruin. It was a woman with dust on her skirts and a child at her side. A mail-order bride no one wanted, who became the mother one girl prayed for, and the legend of town would never forget.